All right, welcome everyone. This is our travel experience host Kyle Rasmussen, and today I have with me my new friend and travel buddy over the last couple of weeks, Allie. Allie, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about some of your experiences. We just had a travel experience together in Morocco, so
Yes,
I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that as well. Yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
me too. I have not done this in a while.
Well, it should be fun. First, before we talk about Morocco, I know you've had a lot of travel experiences over the years. How many countries have you been to?
So I actually had to look at this today because I couldn't remember, but it's now Morocco was 33.
33. Wow, that's
Yep.
awesome. Um, has that all been in your adult life, or have you done some of that as a kid?
Honestly, I would say in half. I probably got to like 15 countries before I was 10. But that's because I was an army brat and we lived overseas and did a and then I had this very long lull until early adulthood when I just decided, hey, you know what I haven't been doing is traveling abroad at all. So I studied abroad in college and then, had like a handful of trips here or there, but it's probably only within, I'd say the last 10 years that I've really like picked up my travel again, and especially within the last 5.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
So I
money
mean,
helps, you know?
yeah,
Like 18-year-old in college, you're like, okay, not really traveling abroad too much.
yeah. I have like $3, so I'm not going anywhere. Um, so what was that like as a kid? I mean, that's a lot of countries before 10 years old.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we were doing a lot of jet setting, but really we lived in Germany for 3 years, right, which is in the middle of
Mhm.
Europe, and so we literally drove our van pretty much anywhere we could, so, we weren't flying places or, doing anything super, luxury, but, I remember, like, at the time also remember so I'm definitely dating myself here, but this is kind of before the EU was like what it is now. I mean, borders
Mhm.
were friendly, but they weren't like this, like, you don't have this like open border the way that we do now, and the currencies were all different. So I
Mhm.
definitely remember like border crossings, going into Italy and like all of a sudden my dad's like speaking terrible Italian or, going into Spain. Um, so like yeah, we just literally drove wherever we could, or we would take, like the Eurostar to London. I think one time we took a ferry or a boat. That was pretty cool. They had a swimming pool on the boat, which like was a
Oh
huge
wow.
deal. Yeah. So, like, yeah, I think anytime we had a school vacation and we weren't flying home to the States to see family, my mom especially really pushed for this. She wanted to culture us and expose us to a lot of things, which, as a 7 or 8-year-old, that's like the worst thing in the world. I think my sister told someone once, like, she dragged us everywhere because, it's like, here's another church, like, here's another statue. I
Yeah.
don't really know anything about, at that age, Disneyland was the most exciting thing. So, like, Euro Disney was always a big deal. But, as
Oh.
an adult now, I really appreciate that because that's not an experience a lot of people get, and I
Mhm.
just was exposed to so much so early, and I think that's been really helpful. It certainly makes me, nostalgic for when traveling, like, that was a lot easier and, just get in the car and go to Europe, which obviously I can't do from California anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was a pretty great thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. First of all, it's once you're over there, it's so easy to get around, but the hard part's getting there.
Yeah,
Um,
especially from the West Coast, as you know.
yes, yes. When it took me 30 hours to get home.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but yeah, that's really interesting to me, and I think you know if I ever have kids one day, I want them to be able to have those sorts of experiences, even if they might not appreciate every church or historical marker or something like that. I can imagine for you just being exposed to that at a young age. I'm sure that has probably shaped your life a little bit.
I'd like to think so. I mean, I think just leaving, I guess I didn't really have the experience of living in one place ever. So, it was easier to say, okay, I've left the place I was born, or I've left the place I've been living. And a lot of people don't do that. The United States has one of
Hmm.
the lowest rates of passport issues in the world. And, it's just clear people don't even sometimes leave their own state. And
Hmm.
I think it's so important to get out there and see how other people live, what other cultures are like, what other languages sound like, what other food tastes like, I think is huge. And I know as a kid, it's not like I was amazing at this. We lived in Korea for a couple years and I probably exclusively ate fried rice. I wasn't eating kimchi or getting super adventurous, but now as an adult, I appreciate my exposure to all of these things. And I do think it informed my love of travel 100%. It just like set this idea in my mind that that was normal and a thing that people do. And like, okay, I love to do this. I want to do more of it. How do I make this happen when I'm the person, you know, paying for it, doing the logistics, all of that. So it was definitely easier as a kid, like just go where your parents take you.
Yeah,
So
let
yeah.
the parents worry about everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But and even the things as a kid that I probably complained about, like one more church or, another museum or something, as an adult, I've really you start to learn about the things that you saw, and
Mhm.
I was an art history minor in college, and so cracking open the textbook and realizing I've seen so many of these things in person, that was pretty amazing for me to have that recognition of like, "Oh, I saw this statue of David in Italy."
Mhm.
Um, and I think continuing that as I go around is something, I like having it now. It's like now it's kind of the opposite direction, like, learning about it, having seen it, and now it's like I'm seeking out the things I learned about. I don't know. It's like feels kind of this nice symmetry to me.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool. Have you gone back to some of the places you visited as a kid?
So I went to Paris a couple times. London is one I've gone back to many times because as an adult, of drinking age, of enjoyment, I love London. It's a great city. But I definitely have these weird moments sometimes when I'm walking and I remember walking down this particular block as a kid. And that's just a really fun feeling. And obviously, all of these cities have changed so much in 30
Mhm.
years. So it's not exactly the same. But I had this really cool experience a couple years ago where I think this was in 2019. I went back to Germany and I had not been to Germany since we moved away. And I went to Berlin and we never went to Berlin because I lived in Germany in the early 90s and the country had reunified, but Berlin was just like not on the to-do list.
Mhm.
So, that was really neat as an adult to come back and see a part of a country that I lived in for 3 years, but had never experienced. I was in a brand new city with way more knowledge now about the history of a place, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm sure that's kind of interesting too, with all the things that have happened in the last 30 years, like seeing a place that has changed so much. I just think about like Berlin is a great example. Someone might have visited it, when it was split, and then visit it 30 years, 40 years later, and now it's all one country. That's got to be an interesting dynamic.
And I would imagine unrecognizable in some ways because they've just built everything up, and the
Yeah.
other thing too is, like, the money isn't even the same, When I was a kid, it was
Mhm.
Deutschmarks, and now it's all euros. So, it's a good thing I wasn't holding on to my marks because I wouldn't be able to use them anymore.
Yeah, what do you do? Is that just worthless now?
I guess they're just collector's items.
Huh, interesting. That's weird. Um, so what have what's been some of your favorite uh, travels as an adult?
Hmm. That is the hardest question because how do you compare places to each other? But I do have a few that stand out for me. I think I always tell people Istanbul is one of my favorite places that I've ever been. And
Okay.
I went in college when I was studying abroad in Israel. We just like did a weekend in Istanbul, and I don't even think we really saw all that you can do there. But I just remember having this great weekend with my friends that I met while I was, studying. Just had these rituals that we came up with. We were staying in this amazing hostel, and it was run by these two Kurdish brothers from Iraq. I mean, how wild is that? And they were so nice, and there was this breakfast every day at the hostel, and we would go up on the roof and we'd have breakfast, and then we would walk down the street to this bakery and buy a loaf of bread and jam, and we would all just sit on a bench and eat this loaf of bread. Like, we did it every day. And I have no idea how it started or why we were doing this, but it was, like, this thing that we did, and you just, like, people watch and sit and eat our loaf of bread. So it was really random, but I just remember so many fun things about that trip, like, obviously the city is stunning and beautiful and such an interesting place where you can literally do as we did, which was get off the ferry on the wrong continent. So,
Oh,
everyone kept saying, "Get off on the European side, don't get off on Asia," and, like, sure enough, we got off in Asia. So, I don't know anywhere
what?
else in the world you can do that.
Yeah, what? I guess did that affect anything?
No, it just we had to spend a lot of money on a cab ride home.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's
Um,
the meeting point of two continents.
yeah, I mean, it's really crazy when you think about it's just all one big city, but I guess there are some things you have to keep in mind. Um, and then I think as like an adult, like in the last few years, my 2 favorites were probably Australia because
Mm.
I was lucky enough to go for work, and I spent a lot of time traveling around and, like, on my own, but I the fact that I got to revisit it so frequently was very different for me. I don't tend to repeat travel destinations that often, and the fact that it was Australia, which is so far away and so hard to get
Yeah.
to, that felt really special, and I just really fell in love with that country. Like, the people there were so nice. I don't think I ever had a bad meal, and it's just, like, a stunningly beautiful country, and it actually reminds me a lot of the Bay Area, just, like, at a much larger scale.
Mhm.
There's like this big harbor and water, and there's ferry boats and hiking and all of that, but just Australian.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think Japan for me was a huge one because it was my first solo travel in a country that didn't speak a lot of English, or I didn't know if they spoke a lot of English. And it was something that logistically had a lot to it that I had to navigate on my own. And I was really so proud of myself when I got home from that trip, and I just had the best time. And again, with the food, I mean, I don't think there is any food in Japan that isn't delicious. If there is, I didn't find it. So, I went in the wintertime and just, like, ate ramen every day. I don't know, it was a pretty amazing trip.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
What in Japan, did were you in Tokyo the whole time, or did you go to other parts?
So, I on that trip, I was in Tokyo and Kyoto.
Okay.
So, I landed in Tokyo, and then this was, like, the most stressful part of the trip for me. I landed in Tokyo, and then I had to take the train that night to Kyoto, and I knew
Mm.
I wanted to take the super fast bullet train. So, I hadn't bought my ticket, though. So, I, like, got off the plane, got through customs, had to, like, find the office in the airport for the train, buy my tickets, and then take the subway to the station where I get the train and then take the train to Kyoto. I was like, "Everything has to go exactly right, or I'm not gonna end up where I wanna be tonight."
Yeah, that's always stressful, especially when you can't, read the signs or anything.
Well, that was the thing that really surprised me. So, I could read the signs because in Japan, almost every single sign is in Japanese and then it's in English. So, I had no idea that that was the case. So, it actually made it really easy to navigate around, which I really appreciated, but, at the same time, moments like that always make me feel so guilty because I think about Japanese people coming to America and, like, depending on where they are in the country, maybe they'll see a sign in Spanish, maybe they'll see a sign in, like, if you're in Chinatown, like, maybe another language, but we're
Mhm.
not making it that easy for anyone.
Yeah, that's one of the, I guess, the big pet peeves that I have about America is that we don't encourage or try to learn other languages here. Um, and then we expect everyone else to learn our language.
Right.
Um, and then when we go abroad, we expect people to know English as well. And I just think I mean, it's nice to have one language where things can be done around the world, but we really don't make an effort at all.
No, and I catch myself doing this when I travel all the time, and it's not great, but at the same time, I don't know anything else, right? It's like my first interaction with a person, I just default to English and hope they can too, and
Mhm.
that's not fair or particularly nice, I think. I do think, like, it's good to make an effort to at least learn the native phrase for "Do you speak English?" Um, but then again, sometimes you go to places and you try to do that and they just look at you like you're crazy and they're just like, "Yeah, we can speak English.
Yeah.
Please don't mangle my language anymore."
Yeah, I guess that's true too, for sure. Um, but yeah, I just think it's so interesting. I think that's one area where we could really improve. I think it would just help our society in general if we encourage to learn other languages and to travel to other places.
I think
I
it
think
might
it's such
help
a great education.
absolutely with empathy and maybe even just, like, basic knowledge. Like, how many times do you even hear people saying, "Speak American?" Like, that's not
Yeah.
even a language. Or, you know, why do they speak English in England or why do they speak American in England or something? And it's like, "Are you serious?"
Oh man.
I
Yeah.
think I saw that on Twitter the other day, and I had a moment of terror for the future of this country.
I'm hoping that was just a joke, but who knows?
I I just don't think so, but
Yeah.
yeah.
These days I wouldn't uh put it past anyone.
Yeah,
Um anyways, so Morocco. So that's where we met, was Morocco.
yes.
Um just what was it, last 2 weeks ago is when we first met, I guess, as we're recording this.
I
Which
guess
is
so,
crazy to think
yeah.
about.
I know it's weird. I flew home from Lisbon a week ago, exactly. So, yeah, that would have been, I guess, a week before that. So, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah. That's wild because it feels like a lifetime ago.
It feels like a year ago, I'm not gonna lie.
I know I was talking to a friend and just kind of like running through the trip, and I was like, I completely forgot that we did a bunch of things in Tangier. Like that was so long ago that I don't even remember.
I barely remember Tangier. It was day 1. I think everyone was jet lagged or running on no sleep, and we left the next day.
Mm,
So, I have to, like, remind myself, yeah, we did a whole walking tour in Tangier. We had dinner there. We were there.
yeah. Yeah. I was like, where did we eat that day? I was like, oh yeah, we went to that seafood place, which I totally forgot about.
It's the last time we had seafood or, like, not a tagine for the rest of the trip.
Yeah. The only thing that wasn't tagine on the whole trip.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so what were your thoughts on Morocco? Was that your first time there?
It was my first time there, and, it's a country that has been at the top of my list for probably 10 years. I mean, since I started, traveling again as an adult, I think it was high up there. Just I don't know why really. Like I don't know what perception of it I had or what idea I had about why I wanted to go there. I do know as a kid my mom went there one time when we were in Spain. She like took the ferry over and I remember desperately wishing I could go, although she claims my sister and I both wanted to stay and go to the beach in Spain, so who knows? But I always had it in my head as this, like, place, like, my mom got to go and I didn't, and I really wanna go, and So, as an adult too, like, realizing, like, oh, they're known for pretty amazing things like textiles and, pottery and things, and the food, I was exposed to Moroccan food a little bit in high school and just loved it. So, maybe the same reasons you wanna go anywhere, right? Like, it sounds fun or sounds cool.
Hmm.
Um, but, I think being in North Africa, there's always, like, that other kind of unknown quantity, like, I think Americans in particular don't tend to travel a bunch to that area of the world, and,
Hmm.
I think especially given the last 20 years or more in this country, we have this perception of, like, anywhere in that region is, like, unsafe or, like, they hate us or, we hate them or, like, maybe there's stereotypes, so,
Yeah.
um I didn't know really what to think or what to expect, and I'm glad that I didn't have these expectations. Not that I think it wouldn't have met them, but because it was just kind of a new experience for me to go in without any preconceived notions or ideas of things that I wanted to see. I didn't have a list of, you know, like landmarks or photos or anything, it's just like I was
Hmm.
just gonna go in and experience it. And I thought it was wonderful. I thought the people were so welcoming and so nice, and everything we did, like, got better and better, Like, I think the first day we were all walking around in Tangier, like, wide-eyed going, "Wow," and Sarah, our group leader, is just like, "Just wait. Yeah, everything's gonna be better than this."
Yeah.
Um, she's also from Marrakesh, so she saved the best for last, in her
Hmm.
opinion, so she
Definitely.
knew we were all gonna be blown away by Marrakesh, and we were. Um but I think, just going and, like, walking through the alleyways and seeing these surprises, like, whether it's this beautiful tile, like, just on an otherwise unremarkable wall or, the ornate, like, we went to a madrasa and, like, saw the tile and the woodwork and plasterwork in that. Visually, it's a very stunningly beautiful country, and in an interesting way, it reminded me a lot of, maybe I don't know if you agree with this, but, like, the Southwest a little bit, like, the landscape was very
Yeah.
arid, like, and I don't know why I didn't expect it. I mean, it borders the Sahara, of course, it's an arid landscape, but there were days, you're driving around and, like, "This could be Arizona. What?"
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that the desert is beautiful, and so the landscapes, were kind of alien sometimes, but also really stunning. I remember one day we saw a rainbow in the desert, and I didn't
Hmm.
know that was possible. So, just like I saw these things that I hadn't expected, and, even, the interesting things that I guess I don't really associate with Morocco, like snake charming. I had no idea they do that there. I always think of that as, from Aladdin or something.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
not a real place either, so maybe they're just borrowing from a bunch of different cultures.
Yeah, that's I like what you said there because I felt the same way. I really wasn't sure what to expect. I mean, I hadn't really it's not a country I've really looked into a whole lot, but I've always wanted to go there. I just have known it through, through history that it's been kind of this melting pot where multiple different um, groups of people have kind of taken control of it and they've all come together there. Um, but I really like my word for the trip was just pleasantly surprised with everything. I was surprised at how diverse everything was, the landscape, the cultures, the people, and then like seeing the mountains. I wasn't expecting there to be a lot of mountains, but there is a very mountainous country. Um, and this, I don't know, it was just such a unique experience and unlike any place that I've been to so far.
I think that's right. I think pleasantly surprised is a great way to put it, and not to say, like, pleasantly surprised because, again, expectations were not low, they were very high. But pleasantly surprised because I my expectations weren't necessarily rooted in any prior knowledge, just expectation
Mhm.
in the fact that I've always wanted to go there, so it better be good.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I agree, like, the mountains were, I think, very surprising to me too, like, of course, I knew the Atlas Mountains are in Morocco, but I don't think I realized the extent to which that range extends through the entire country.
Mhm.
So we were just I mean, I think all the days that we were driving around, we were just in the mountains or we
Yeah.
were in the mountains. And I remember, we were, up in the hot air balloons above Marrakesh and could not for the life of me see Marrakesh, but I saw the mountains.
Yeah. Yeah, what'd you think of the hot air balloon ride?
I was very excited that we did that because that was something I was really looking forward to, and I've never been in a hot air balloon before. I don't know if I'll do it again. Maybe. I mean, I wouldn't turn it down, but it was I mean, like, there's not really anything else like it. Like, we don't ever experience the air in that way, like, you have this slow ascent, and then you're just kinda hanging there. And
Mhm.
I did have a moment where I had to actively talk myself through, like, "Don't think about too much about what you're doing right now." Like, you have a basket under your feet, just don't worry about the rest. And, and then, you can just, like, enjoy the sunrise and the other balloons floating in the air, and it's just I think it's an amazing this technology that is over a century old, right?
Mhm.
And we still get so much enjoyment out of it because it is really special, like, to just see these balloons floating when you feel like they shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Yeah, yeah, I'm super glad that I did it as well. I was kind of debating it. I was like, "Ah, this is kind of a lot of money. I don't know if I should do this." But I'm so glad I did. It was such a unique experience. Like you said, I don't know how I could relate it to any other experiences. Like it was a weird feeling, but it was so cool to see the sunrise that way.
It really was, and, there's nothing like a pilot telling you she has no way to steer the craft that you're in.
Yeah, that was, she was great. She went way higher than she was supposed to, and she was like, "I have no idea how to steer this thing."
Yeah, we're just gonna try not to hit a power line on the way
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, that gives you a lot of confidence.
I mean, I had a lot of confidence in her. She was very assured, and
Yeah.
her confidence in holding, smartphones out into the air over the desert floor while trying to take photos of us. I mean, she didn't seem worried about it.
Yeah, she just stuck her hand right out there, and that was probably the worst part of it was her holding my phone out 5,000 feet above the ground.
Oh, I didn't let her hold my phone. I had someone else use their phone. I
Uh,
felt really bad, but my phone doesn't have a case, and I was just picturing it slipping through her fingers,
yeah,
it's got argan oil and who knows what all over it. Like, she's just gonna drop it. It's gonna be raining phones.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Um, but yeah, Morocco was really fun for me. I was really surprised at how open it was too, and how welcoming everyone was. Um, it was such a cool place. And then Sarah being the trip leader, I mean, she was amazing. And I don't think we would have had such a great experience if it wasn't for her.
No, I mean, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say she really made the trip very special. I mean, I haven't done a huge amount of group travel, but by and far, she was the best group leader I've had because she just cared so much about well, first of all, like, being from Morocco and, being sort of an ambassador for it, she took that role very seriously, but also she just wanted us to experience everything that she loved about it and for us to love it
Mhm.
too. I mean, just the things she did that were kind of extra on top of our planned itinerary. She took us to her friend's house for dinner, and we got to, see how a family that was really unexpected and I think one of my favorite moments of the entire trip. I think my table, we were just
Mhm.
sitting there chatting with this guy who's, like, on one of their soccer teams. It's
Yeah.
I don't know, it's, like, really that was the one time where we really interacted, I think, the most with locals, and
Mhm.
she engineered that entire interaction. And just, like, her taking us through the markets and, telling us how to be careful and, like, she really just wanted us to enjoy ourselves and see everything, and, I definitely think she was pushing Marrakesh as the best place, and I don't know that she was wrong.
Yeah, she's very proud of Marrakesh for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, she went way above and beyond, uh, what was asked of her as the trip leader. She really went out of her way to make sure we got to experience everything, um, which I'm really thankful for. Uh, but so this isn't your first FTLO trip, correct?
No. So, um, should I explain that a little bit, or have you talked about that before, what FTLO is?
Yeah, so I've mentioned FTLO in other
Okay.
podcasts. This is my third trip with them now, so I've talked about it a couple times. But yeah, what other trips with that company have you been on?
So this is my second trip with FTLO. So I did their Greek islands trip last summer, and that was my not my first group trip, but my first group trip as an adult, and only the second group trip I'd ever taken. And I just had high expectations, but I didn't really know what it would be like. I think especially as an adult, you go into these kinds of scenarios and you're hoping everyone else is going to behave as an adult, like, okay, like, we all know what it takes to, like, be around other people for an extended period of time. 12 people is not it's not an easy number. It's not a difficult number. It's not like having 25 people on, quote, "small group trip," which that's
Hmm.
not small, right? But 12 is a lot of people, especially remembering everyone's name, where they're from. That always takes a
Yeah.
few minutes to really solidify. And you're always hoping you're gonna get along with everyone, and it'd be fun. And on this trip, I went and I had my own room, which was different from the last trip where I had a roommate. And I'm glad for this particular trip that I had it, because I was exhausted every day. And having that, like, solo time was really, I think, something that I learned from the previous trip that I value more than I thought I did. But these trips were it's very hard to compare them. The Greek islands trip is a more like fun and sun kind of trip. There's
Hmm.
boating and beaches, and you have a lot of downtime just kind of sunning yourself in the Aegean, and like
Yeah.
it's pretty spectacular. And this one was very kind of go, 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 because we covered a huge swath of Morocco in 8 days,
Yeah.
which, if you look at the map, that's why a lot of group trips don't do this. They cover either northern Morocco or southern Morocco. They don't tend to do both. We spent a lot of time in a van, but that's how I think we all bonded, really, was
Hmm.
through our shared pain. But no, I think FTLO as a company, I really think they do this well, and they make this experience, it doesn't feel like, oh, a group trip. Like, I don't feel like I'm on a field trip in school. I don't feel like someone's forcing me to do something I don't wanna do. I mean, they're very
Hmm.
open about the fact that everything is optional, even the planned activities. You don't have to show up for everything. It might be kinda awkward if you don't show up for everything, but you don't have to. They're not gonna force you to leave your hotel room, right?
Yeah.
Um but they always pick interesting things. I mean, I think this is what struck me in both trips was, you do the typical, maybe stereotypical things like, okay, we're in the Greek islands, we're gonna go on a catamaran. But we also, like, went to this farm in Paros where this British expat and his son are, like, growing olives and capers and lavender and oregano and all these things. And everybody was thinking, like, why are you taking us to this farm? Like, what? And it was the best day of the entire trip because they were delightful. They, like, gave us their homemade wine and, like, fed us lunch, and we just ate all these things that they're growing, and you're looking out of this stunning view over the sea, and, the wind is blowing, and, like, you'd see goats and, all this, and it's just, like, that's not the thing that I think a lot of people are doing in Paros.
Hmm.
And I felt like this trip was the same, where we did a lot of very typical things like, okay, we're gonna walk through the Medina and we're gonna go buy rugs, and we can go buy pottery from the craftsman. But I think also, we stopped and met this family in their home, and even these other things that we did, it was like, no, we're gonna go buy directly from the artisans. And
Hmm.
if possible, these artisans are gonna be female led. I mean, that was really great, I thought. It showed thoughtfulness and this idea that we're not just gonna go and, like, buy the cheapest option of something because it's just the touristy place that everyone goes. It's like, no, this is the local representative place that we're going to go to. And that's where I think the company really tries to put their own like unique spin on the experience. So you don't really feel like you're just kind of like checking a location off a list, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I feel like they really do a great job of getting you immersed into the actual place, the culture, the history, all of that. Yes, you do the touristy things too, but I think it's a great balance of really diving deep and also giving you the ability to have that free time to go do your own thing as well. I know I've really enjoyed their trips, and I think they really do a great job of serving their clientele well, where they're catering this towards young professionals. And I think as a young professional, it's perfect for it's exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and I think, their range of destinations, there's something for everyone, depending on whatever kind of trip you want. And I think it's really telling that on both trips I've been on, there've been many people who it's not their first trip, it's their second or third. And the fact that there's so many repeat customers and everyone's already planning their next one, nobody I've met has walked away from an FDLO trip going, God, I never want to do that again.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, how can I afford to go on one tomorrow?
Oh my god, I'm like I think when I went on the Greek trip, I was looking at their list of trips and I thought, "Okay." I mean, they do have an age limit, right? Like, they technically 40 is, like, their cutoff, and so I'm thinking, "Okay, I'm 35, like, how many of these can I go on before I turn 40?" And I was like, "Okay, I'll go, like, 1 a year," and then they keep introducing new locations, so now,
Mhm.
like, 2 a year, 2 a year is good.
Yeah.
And I'm, like, afraid for the day where I'm planning, like, 3 of their trips, and I'm like, "Take all my money, just take it all."
Yeah. Do you have any other ones in the works?
Any future FTLO trip?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, in February, I'm going to Lapland, which is northern Finland, and I guess part of Norway and Sweden as well. And then this is planning far ahead, but in December of 2023, I'm going to Vietnam. So,
Wow.
very excited about both of these.
Yeah, both of those sound amazing.
But I
Um,
also think they're going to be completely different from the previous 2 trips that I've done, and,
mhm.
that's what excites me, like, I'm not gonna go in going, "Okay, well, day 1, we're gonna go to the factory and do that," it's just like, I just don't know what to expect, like, they're so tailored to each destination.
Yeah.
So, it's like doing a brand new thing each time, and what I really appreciate about them too is I think I mentioned, like, I've done some solo travel, and I don't mind traveling by myself. But, I think especially coming out of the pandemic, I knew I wanted to start traveling again, but the idea of doing it by myself was so terrible to me because it's like I've just spent a year by myself,
Mhm.
with limited human interaction, and I couldn't stomach the idea of going and trying to enjoy myself, but still by myself. So, that was kind of like my big push into group travel was to try to, you know how can I do this but be around people? And they
Yeah.
provide me a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great. I've made a lot of friends like you through this company and through these trips, and I think it makes that experience better. I mean, like you said, I could totally go do Morocco by myself if I really wanted to, but I don't think it would have been nearly as fun or as impactful as going with this group.
No, and I mean, the group we had a pretty spectacular group, I will say. So,
Yeah,
that made the trip
definitely.
as well.
Definitely. I thought we really bonded as a group for sure.
We had things to bond about.
That's true. Well, maybe spare the details on that one, but
Yeah,
we had a great bonding experience for sure.
yeah.
Um, so speaking of solo travel, it sounds like you've done a lot of international solo travel.
Yeah, I mean, some of it I think is kind of hybrid. Like I would classify a lot of my work travel effectively as solo travel because like, I'm going to work during the day, but then it's not like I was like out in Sydney on my own. Like I wasn't
Mhm.
hanging out with coworkers. So I was like navigating the city in my free time on my own and the same with like London and Oxford. So I would classify some of those trips as solo travel. But I did the Japan trip was purely on my own, and I also did a couple places in Europe in 2019 on my own as well. Berlin was one of those, and then, Copenhagen, and what was the other one? Uh, Prague, but I okay, so that part of the trip wasn't by myself, but, like so Copenhagen and Berlin, I was navigating those by myself as well, and I think there are upsides to traveling by yourself. I think the main one that I find is you can do whatever you want. Like, think
That's
of how
true.
many times you travel with people and, like, the negotiations that come into, like, "Okay,
Oh my
I wanna
gosh.
go to this place, and you wanna go to this place, and I wanna eat here, and you wanna eat there, and I'm hungry, and I wanna just go get some ice cream," and you're like, "Why are we eating ice cream at 10 o'clock in the morning?" I don't know.
Yeah.
If it's me, I can just do that.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
I really
that
enjoy
is
that
one of the
aspect
pros
of
for
it.
sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh
do you ever feel I guess nervous traveling on your own, especially as a female?
Um, you know, Japan probably made me the most nervous ahead of time because, I didn't really know how accessible it was going to feel. I didn't really realize how much effort is put into, you know, everything is in English, train signs, schedules, street signs, everything has an English equivalent. And of course, Google Maps helps greatly.
Hmm.
Um, but Japan also turned out for me like, the thing that made me feel so safe there was and I guess I didn't really realize this before, but it's a culture where doing things by yourself is not weird, right? Like, people go out to dinner by themselves all the time, they hang out in bars by themselves, so I never felt like I had a target on my back for being a solo female because you're at dinner and all the other tables are other single diners, right?
Hmm.
So that was good, and I think also, the rules just apply. Just don't be dumb, don't take any unnecessary risks and do things that might put you in a situation that's maybe not great. Like, I always think about, is this something that I'm gonna enjoy by myself? Like, I'm not gonna go
Hmm.
to a rowdy bar or a party by myself when I'm traveling because that just doesn't seem like a good idea.
Yeah.
Or, you know, it's late enough at night, take a taxi, don't walk, I mean, in
Hmm.
retrospect, I've definitely had experiences where you think about it the next day and you're like, "I probably shouldn't have done that." Well, Morocco is an example when I arrived on my own and I got in a day ahead of the trip, and my flight from Lisbon arrived at 1:30 in the morning or something, so I was, like, getting to the hotel at, like, 2 o'clock. And, I had to get a taxi from the airport. There's, like, no one there. There's, like, this line of taxis, and none of them, like, want to help me. Like, I was just kind of standing there like, "Hello, taxi," and, like, no one moved except this man with his, like, random car was like, "Taxi." It's like, "Okay." And I get to the hotel, and the guy at the front desk, he's like, "Was that a taxi?" I'm like, "Apparently." It's just, like, basically whatever, like, the random it was like this guy was running his own, like, Uber X service, like, he was
Hmm.
just like, "I'm gonna go to the airport and pick up passengers and charge them money." I don't know. In retrospect, that's not great decision making, but it was also, 1:30 in the morning,
Yeah.
so I wasn't exactly thinking straight. So, those are things, like, I would caution other people, like, don't do stuff like that, but I think also trust your instincts, like, if
Hmm.
I had had a sense that that guy was gonna drive me in the other direction and, like, murder me, I wouldn't have gotten in the car.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you kind of there's always that intuition there. Like you can feel if a situation is good or bad for the most part.
I think that that's true, and also, again, it's, like, safety in numbers, stay in crowded areas, well-lit areas, don't go down alleyways by yourself.
Yeah.
But, like,
It's
that's all the same rule of thumb we live by at home, nothing really changes because you're in another country.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's I mean, you wouldn't go. out late at night by yourself at home. So why would you do that in a place where you can't speak the language?
Right. Well, so here's a story. So when it was like my first evening in Tokyo, I think, and I went to that famous crossing, like I think it's
Oh,
Shibuya. I'm mangling this. But it's just like this very famous like crosswalk. And I'm walking around the area and this man with like his briefcase is like he's like stops me. And at the time I had my hair was dyed blonde. So I think I just like from a distance was like, you know, white girl. And, um, he stopped me and he was like, "Hi, are you American?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Do you wanna go get a cup of coffee? I'd love to practice my English," or whatever. And I was like, "No." Like, I was so taken aback, like, he was just so forward and just, like, barely had said hello and was like, "Do you wanna go get a coffee?" And I was like, I don't think that's a good idea.
yeah.
Thank you," and just, like, keep walking. So, like common sense, don't go off with strangers even if they offer to buy you coffee.
Yeah. Don't take the candy from strangers.
Yeah, no.
Um, so I guess going back to the trip there, um, I know we actually ended up there was a few of us who all went to Lisbon, who we had all planned it out separately, and then we ended up there together after the trip. Which I think is one of the fun parts about meeting people abroad is sometimes you end up going to the same places and then you have kind of a new friend in that
Yeah.
place. So yeah, what were your thoughts about Lisbon and the couple days we had there?
Well, I think so I had also gone to Lisbon in the 3 days before the trip started as well. And I was there with some friends from San Francisco, and then it was nice to go back, and I thought I would be doing that portion of the trip on my own, and then I was like, "Oh, I have friends here, this is fun." Um, like, I think the days after the trip, it was a little bizarre for me because in a way I felt like I was coming back to something familiar, even though I had ever spent a grand total of 3 days in Lisbon.
Yeah.
But coming off the plane, I was like, "Ha, I'm back," you know? Um, so that was interesting, but I loved Lisbon. I mean, well, it reminds me of home in that it's very hilly. There's a lot of
Yeah.
stairs and a lot of hills, and you will be working your it's like every day in Lisbon is leg day, like you're really putting
Sure.
the effort in. Especially if you wanna climb up as we did to the castle.
Yeah.
That's that's quite a hike. But I think Lisbon is so interesting where again, it's another location that I really didn't know much about before I went there, other than, it's kind of the corner of the Iberian Peninsula and, the
Mhm.
tiny little country next to Spain. Um, and I just thought it was fantastic. I mean, it's one of those places that you go and you're like, "Ah, this place has its own identity." Like, that doesn't always happen. But just seeing the cobblestone streets, the buildings, they have their own architectural style, and then the colorfulness of the buildings, like, they're all painted different
Mhm.
colors, that and then, of course, it's all on the river, and it's very scenic. They have a copycat Golden Gate Bridge, so that made me feel like I was at home.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, actually, that really short-circuited my brain a few times, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I would just, like, casually glance up and, like, have this, like, moment of uncertainty about, like, where I was in space and time. But no, I think Lisbon is a really fun city. Like, the food is amazing, they've got, like, their own cultural stuff, like, if you wanna go and have dinner, they do these fado performances, which is, like, this traditional folk singing. There's tons of water if you wanna just sit and look at the river or go on a river cruise. I mean, I would go back. I mean, like, the next time somebody's like, "Hey, you wanna go to Lisbon or Portugal?" I would definitely say yes, because also I only ever went to Lisbon, there's so much more. Like, I never went to
Yeah.
Porto, you know, so
Yeah, that's the crazy thing is I mean, that was just one city. I think there's a ton that Portugal has to offer outside of Lisbon, but Lisbon itself was amazing. Um,
well, because you were only there for, like, what, like, 36 hours, right?
yeah, basically.
So do you feel
Um,
like you got enough of a taste where you're like, "I wanna come back here?"
yeah, I would say so. I feel like I got to see like what I was really, I guess, planning to see there. Um, and got to, try some of the foods and things like that. But I would definitely want to go back and spend, a week or 2 weeks just exploring the whole country. And that was the same for me. On the way to Morocco, I went to Iceland for basically 36 hours, and it was the same thing. It was like I got a little taste. I got to experience, a bunch of cool things in that time, but I definitely need to go back and get the full experience.
Like, more than the Blue Lagoon.
Yes, I will say that was amazing and definitely one of my highlights of the abroad. Um, but yes, there is more to Iceland than that.
But you know what? To be fair to the Blue Lagoon, that is one of my favorite things I've ever done, like, in my life.
Yeah, yeah, that was pretty incredible. Not gonna lie.
Especially
Uh,
coming off a red eye, like, why doesn't every flight that's a red eye end in a hot bath?
yeah, that was honestly about as perfect as it could have been. I mean, I had a 7.5 hour flight. It was early in the morning, which means it was late at night for me and my body clock. And then to get off to see the sunrise while I'm sitting in the Blue Lagoon drinking some wine at 8 in the morning, that was a pretty magical experience.
There are many worse ways to spend your time, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Um, anyways, well, I guess really quick, what are some of your other favorite travel memories, or what was maybe your favorite part of Morocco too?
Um, so I think my favorite part of Morocco was probably the Sahara. I mean, the desert, I'm just like, I don't think I've even still processed, like, what I saw, like, just, we were on camels, which, I don't enjoy the camel riding, but like, just being on these camels in the desert, and there's just dunes as far as you can see, and they're just, like, it's like one of those things where you're like, your brain is kind of like, "Well, I've seen this before, but not like this," like,
Yeah,
I kept joking I was, like, in a screensaver or something because that's what it looked like,
yeah,
but, like, I was there, it looked like the opening scene from Aladdin, like, not to make generalizations about Disney movies, right? But, like, that I don't know what other reference point I really have is, like, the camel just plodding on the dunes, like, that's the image that my brain is going to, but, you're just, like, looking out in the distance and, like, the sun was setting. That was unreal. I don't know, like, I don't have
hmm
a great eloquent way to describe it other than it's just, like, really amazing. And then the camp we stayed at was, I mean, like, we're just in these, like, glamping tents in the desert. There's, like, a shower and a flush toilet and, like, carpets everywhere. It's just really beautiful. Um, but I think I have other fun memories from other trips. I like to tell this one a lot because I don't know, it's like one of the crazier things that I've ever had happen. So, when I graduated from high school, I went on this trip to Russia and China for, like, 3 weeks. That was my other only group experience, but that was, like, a group of high school age kids, like, there were probably, like, 20 of us, and, like, I think we had, like, adult chaperones or whatever. And,
hmm
we took the train from Russia to China, right? So we're getting on the train in Irkutsk, and this train is gonna go through Mongolia, it's gonna stop, at the Mongolian border, and then it's gonna stop at the Mongolian-Chinese border. So, we're getting on this train, we're gonna be on this train for 3 days. So we get in these, like, sleeper compartments and, we're a pretty large group, so we're split into, like, 4 people in a compartment. And then there's, like, 2 of the compartments where, like, someone knocks on the door at, like, the Mongolian-Russian border, and it's like, "Passport control," and, like, everyone's, like, confused, like, they've already come and checked our passports, like, "What's going on?" And
hmm
so, to set the stage, before we left Russia, there had been men in one of our compartments, like, they were in the wrong compartment, but they were just, like, sitting in there, like, chilling, and, like, we had to, like, get it sorted out with the conductor, like, "No, these are our compartments, like, not yours," so they left. But that's who was at the door, were these men, and they forced their way into the compartment, start ripping panels off the wall,
Oh
and
gosh.
pulling out the, like, whatever they've stashed in there. Like, I don't know if it was, like, prescription drugs or, real drugs or like who knows, but they take whatever they need and leave, and everyone's just like sitting there like, what just happened? And that is still one of the craziest things I've ever seen is like drug smugglers in our compartments like come back for their stuff at the border. I don't know how they expected to get it off the train, but I
Yeah,
guess
that's
after that point
wild.
it wasn't our concern after that. It's like, okay, let's put the compartment back together. Yeah.
Yeah, that probably could have gone a lot worse too.
Could have gone worse. Yeah. Could have been like Claire Danes in Broke Down Palace, like in a Chinese school for the rest of your life.
Oh man, that's a wild story.
Yeah. I swear it's real. Like, that sounds so made up, but it was one of the most bizarre things, like, it was crazy. I fortunately, the good part of that story is that was not my compartment, so I
Well,
I
that's
heard all of this happening, like, because they were ripping stuff apart, like, you I was like, "What is going on next door?" And then, immediately everyone's like, "Oh my god."
good. That's funny. Um, well, Allie, any other short stories you want to share or anything else that you tell the listeners?
Um, no, I don't think I have any stories off the top of my head. I think I just really wanna revisit really quickly this idea of, like, solo travel, like,
Yeah.
especially female who travels solo a lot. I think that it's something that I really try to push my friends and, acquaintances, like, just consider it for yourself, I mean, I the idea of doing anything by ourselves can be really scary, we're especially as
Hmm.
Americans, like, we're conditioned to, like, always do things with someone else, like, even dining out solo is, like, a big deal for a lot of people, or, like, going to the movies by yourself, which is crazy because you're not doing anything, you're just watching a screen, But we, I think, especially as Americans, have there's something wrong with you if you're doing something by yourself. But
Hmm.
really, I think travel, especially on your own, you learn so much about yourself and your own capabilities because you have no one else to lean on. You can't let someone else navigate you around or plan the trip or, pay for things. Like it's just all on you. And I think some of the things that I've learned the most about myself come from those experiences where I realize how capable I am, what I can actually do even if I'm super nervous or, I don't know if I've ever really been scared, but, um, I don't know, I just really push everyone to consider doing it. Like, if you've got this dream trip that you're planning and it's a destination that you think you'd be safe in by yourself, don't wait for your friends, don't wait for your family, just go, go do the thing. And if you can't go by yourself safely, then see if FTLO has a destination and
Yes, definitely. I 100% agree with that. I've traveled a lot solo as well, and it's a really reflective experience. I think you learn a lot about yourself. You push yourself outside of your comfort zone, and I think you really get immersed in something different. I know some of my favorite travel memories are just moments where I've just been all by myself. Um, and so I think it's really important to do that sometimes, at least. Obviously, be smart about it, but definitely a great thing to do, and you'll really grow as a person because of it.
100%.
Um, well, I think that's a good place to end. I know it's getting late here, so we'll end it here. But Allie, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, this was so fun. I love talking about travel, so anytime you wanna pick my brain again, I'm happy to do it,
Yeah.
so
Obviously, I love talking about travel too, so I'm 100% into that. Well, anyways, thanks again, Allie, and I look forward to seeing you somewhere around the world soon.
Alright, thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
Hey, everybody, Kyle here. If you enjoyed today's show and want more, you can always check out every episode on Spotify, Anchor, YouTube, and now Amazon Music as well. Just search for Our Travel Experiences on any of those platforms and it will pop up. You can also find everything all in one place on my website, ourtravelexp.com. And if you want to see my travel pictures as well as travel pictures from guests on the show, you can check them out on Instagram. The page is called Our Travel Experiences Podcast. And if you want to share your own pictures on the Instagram page or be a guest on the podcast, you can message me via that Instagram page or email me at ourtravelexperiences@outlook.com. I would love to see your pictures and hear about your travel experiences, so please send them my way. And if that isn't enough for you, make sure to check out my weekly YouTube show, From Around the World Fridays. Every Friday, I'm taking 5 to 10 minutes to answer questions from listeners, share some souvenirs that I bought over the years, share my postcards over the years that I've accumulated, or share videos and pictures from one particular city or country that I visited, and so much more. So check it out, guys. You won't be disappointed. And make sure you go subscribe to that as well. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you somewhere around the world soon.